Hi everybody, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to meet my friend Rosemary. Hi.
Hi, what herb are you talking about today?
Rosemary.
Ooh, I've heard about rosemary. That's really cool. I'm gonna go check the eggs to see if they're there. Oh wait, my basket! No, I'm not.
All right, go get your basket. He just loves being in the videos. And he was blocking the view, but as you can see right over my shoulder here, I've got some rosemary still alive in the garden. And there's nothing like external weather that gets me motivated to finally get some projects done. And one of them has been to make rosemary infused oil. So I'll talk to you today a little bit about some of the medicinal properties and some of the other ways I use rosemary. And then I'll bring you along with me into the kitchen where we will make some infused oil. So I don't have to harvest rosemary for tincture this year, which is nice. I've got lots in stock in clinic. And rosemary is one of my favorite herbs to have for digestive formulations because it has this pungency and warmth, so it really helps to get things moving. It's an excellent antispasmodic, so it's going to help with anybody who's dealing with spasming, cramping, any type of that pain in the digestive system. And because it's also a carminative. And I actually have a whole video on herbal carminatives, so I'll make sure that I link that so you guys can check it out. I definitely think it's important for people to learn the foundations of digestive herbs, because if our digestive system isn't working well, then we can't absorb anything. So we can be taking the best herbs and the best supplements and eating the best food, and it doesn't matter if our digestive system is compromised somehow. So getting to know your carminatives is always the best bet. But specifically, I like having rosemary in formulas for people who suffer a lot of adrenal fatigue, because she's also a really great adrenal tonic. Hey, Malfoy. And so I like having that at my disposal. Also, anybody with any nervous system issues, because rosemary is an excellent antidepressant, pretty good for anxiety as well, and just general nervous system support. Rosemary is what we term an amphoteric nervine. So these are nervines that tend to be a little bit more uplifting. So really good for people with chronic fatigue who tend to be more like the Eeyore type personalities when they get depressed. Low energy, can't get out of bed, don't really want to move around a lot. Rosemary is an excellent ally. I also really like having rosemary in stock for its cardiovascular support, because it actually works directly on the cardiac muscle. And it's what we call a diaphoretic, so it's going to help kind of shunt blood to the areas in the body that it needs to go. But also what my teacher, Michael Vertoli, coined neurovasodilator. And what this means is it helps to bring blood flow to the brain. So you can start to see these combinations. Rosemary is also a plant that we use for helping people with poor memory, brain fog, poor concentration, lack of focus. And then you couple that with that kind of adrenal support, and you can understand kind of a full picture of how rosemary works. And a lot of that has to do with the mechanisms of driving blood to the brain. So really, really great plant. Like I said, I tend to use it mostly for digestive system, nervous system, and also cardiovascular support. So say I was making a cardiovascular formula for someone, rosemary might be the great catalyst in that formulation. I tend to like to use about 5 herbs when I make formulations, and I always need a little bit of pungency and heat. That helps to drive constituents to where I need them to go. And so if I have somebody who I'm making a cardiovascular formula from, who tends to be a little sluggish and tired, low energy, rosemary would make a great catalyst for their formula. So as with all plants, there are always areas where we proceed with caution. And before I forgot to mention the fact that rosemary is an amazing antibacterial and antiviral. and tends to be a plant that a lot of people like to include in their fire cider recipes. So, you know, while it doesn't directly stimulate the immune system, we've got the excellent supportive, digestive supportive mechanism, because again, remember how much of our immune system's in our gut. We really need to really focus on that gut. Everybody kind of wants to jump right to the big guns, you know, like let's detox and, you know, give me all the immune boosting stuff I can. But again, if our gut's not working well, right? So fire cider, while everybody kind of knows it as this remedy we have in the winter months to help support the immune system, one of the ways it does that is by being an amazing digestive tonic. But people like to include it because of its warmth and its antibacterial and antiviral properties. So areas where I would maybe be a little cautious using rosemary. So there is no toxicity associated with Rosmarinus officinalis. So in terms of toxicity, we don't have to worry, but sometimes the actions by which a herb works are the reason why we want to proceed with caution. So in this case, astringency is one of the areas where we kind of have to be cognizant. So I wouldn't, because rosemary is very astringent, if you've ever chewed on rosemary leaves before, you immediately get that drying sensation in the mouth. That's what we're wanting to avoid combining with a bunch of other astringent herbs. But if you're lactating, for example, you wouldn't want to be taking a lot of astringent herbs because it could dry up your milk. Also, again, that antispasmodic action that rosemary has, we would want to be cautious in pregnancy. And because of its pungency and everything, I usually don't use it for children under the age of 3. There are other warming herbs that are a little bit gentler, that are much safer for young children. So those are the areas where I just proceed with a bit of caution. And because it has actions on the nervous system. So I've talked about this before in past videos, and I'm going to say it again. Whenever a plant does something that your medication does, you shouldn't combine the two without working with a qualified natural health practitioner of some kind, because in this case we're looking at say like cardioactive glycosides and also your nervous system herbs, your antidepressants, anxiolytic, and any mood altering medications. You want to proceed with caution. So because it is not getting any warmer here, just about an hour north of us, there was snow on the ground. So I'm going to be cutting back all my rosemary and bringing it inside. So I'm going to do that now, and then I will meet you in my kitchen. So I'm back inside, and I actually ended up with a lot more rosemary than I had anticipated. So I've already gone ahead and I've stripped all the leaves from the stems. If you haven't seen my most recent video on preserving olive oil herb cubes in your freezer, you can check out that video. I do go through a description on how to remove the little leaves from the stems. But basically you want to hold the rosemary plant in the opposite direction in which the leaves grow, and then just use your pinch with your fingers and slide down, and those will all come right off nice and easy. So I'm going to be making 2 different infused oils today. So as I mentioned, there's lots of really great medicinal properties. You can tincture rosemary, and I have tons of videos where I have made tinctures, so I highly recommend you check those out. I believe St. John's wort was one of the ones where I did both a tincture and an infused oil in that video. But I don't need tincture in clinics, so I'm going to be doing, like I said, 2 types of infused oils for 2 very different purposes. I'm going to be infusing an oil for topical salve use and potentially like maybe a little roller ball. If you've ever purchased a headache salve or a headache roller ball before, you're gonna know that one of the ingredients that's really common in these little home remedies is rosemary essential oil. And why would I use rosemary essential oil when I have this amazing aromatic fragrant plant right here? So I'm gonna be making a 500 milliliter jar, and I'm not even gonna chop it up. I'm just going to pack it well into my jar, and I'm going to use the carrier oil. I tend to use either apricot, kernel oil, or organic cold pressed sunflower oil. I think I'm going to be transitioning to apricot exclusively, but that's what I use topically for salves. It tends to have less of a greasy texture, so when I'm make oils for salves, for roller balls, and for body oils, people really prefer like a lighter carrier oil. Olive oil is really, really thick and heavy for a lot of people. So I'm going to be doing that, but I'm also going to be infusing the rest of it into olive oil. And this will be for a culinary oil. So you can use this in salad dressings. You can use this to cook with at very low temperatures. Of course, you can use this as like a dressing on stir fries. This would make a really lovely present too. So if you're looking at doing, saying, homemade gifts this year for your winter holiday gift giving seasons, why not do some, like fresh herbal infused oils? And so that's what I'm going to be doing with the rest. So I'm going to do a full liter of my olive oil. And like I said, I'm just going to pack it in there. I remove the stem because I like to make as potent of medicine or in this case, culinary oil as possible. And I'm not going to quite fill this one up all the way because I actually want to save a little bit of my rosemary for drying as well. So that way I've got some dried rosemary to use in the winter months. Another really great idea would be to say, make a rosemary butter. And check out my wild leek video because I make a wild leek compound butter in that video and you would use the exact same process. So for today, I'm just going to tuck the rest of that off to the side. So I've got my rosemary loosely packed here for my olive oil and a little bit more densely packed for my medicinal purpose. So again, this is going to be for like a headache salve or a headache roller ball that I will combine with peppermint infused oil that I also have. Those two are going to be lovely together. So all you're going to do now, and remember we are using fresh herbs. So if this makes you nervous, you can dry the herbs out first and then add the olive oil because there's going to be water content, right? So we have to be kind of cognizant of this. There's a couple ways you can deal with the water content. One of my favorite ways is to warm up the oils, even just for like an hour in a slow cooker. So what I'll do is I'll break out my Instant Pot and I'll put some washcloths on the bottom, just so that way the jars are not directly touching the bottom of the pot. I fill the Instant Pot so I get water, say about 3/4 of the way, and then I put it on the lowest temperature warm with the lid off. And that will help to warm the oils and then evaporate any of the water that's in there. You can also do this on a double boiler on a stove top. So if you're nervous about water content. But another thing you can do is just let it sit, checking it. I usually like to check it after about 3 to 4 weeks. You want to make sure there's no mold growing on the top. So making sure your herbs are completely submersed below the oil is key. And then what you can do is strain out your herbs and then let your oil sit for about 24 hours and you'll actually start to see water droplets form at the bottom. So the water is denser. And so they'll form at the bottom and you can carefully pour your oil off, ensuring that none of that water transfers over. So that's called decanting. You can decant the oil off and you may lose a bit of oil in that process. So your two options are to do what I just said. So sort of decant the oil off, leaving the water at the bottom, or you can gently warm them, allowing that water content from your herbs to evaporate. I very rarely have had problems with rosemary. I don't find it to be a herb that has a ton of water content. I've never had it go moldy ever in all the years that I have done this. However, herbs like comfrey, for example, which has like a lot of water in it, I always let those wilt. I always let my comfrey leaves wilt for a few days. So I'm just going to top up with my oil. And make sure I label, right? I don't want to get these two mixed up, although olive oil is quite dark in color. There we are. And just pop a lid. Another option, you could make a rosemary infused vinegar. That would be really nice too for salad dressings and that. The difference there is that you would want a parchment paper barrier. And then I'm going to use my organic olive oil for this one. It's going to be beautiful. If my family happens to be watching this, act surprised if you get rosemary olive oil for Christmas. And I mean, you can use this in body products too. If you choose, if you like using olive oil topically, you absolutely can do that. So there we go. I'm not going to quite fill all the way. I need to save a little bit of olive oil for salad dressing and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to let both of these sit for about 3 weeks before I check them again, periodically. Also cracking that lid open if you're worried about mold in any way, shape, or form. And when I don't like to leave the herbs sitting. So unlike tinctures where you can leave your herbs sitting for a really long time and I only press them when I need them, because of the water content, I do like to strain out those herbs after about 3 to 4 weeks or so when I'm using fresh herbs. So there you have it, folks. I've got a liter of rosemary infused into organic olive oil and 500 milliliters of rosemary infused into, I believe this one is my organic sunflower oil. So thank you so very much for joining me on my rosemary adventure today. I'm so glad I managed to get out. It's only going to get colder here and I hear rumors of snow. So most of my fresh herb adventures are going to be done until about March or April here in Ontario. If you have any questions about rosemary in general or some of the wonderful things that you can make with it, you can leave those below. If you like my content, I always appreciate a subscribe and a thumbs up. And until next time, this is Correne from Spirea Herbs, wishing you health and wellness.